The ACN podcast is made possible thanks to the generosity of our listeners and sponsors, including the Agile Alliance. As a nonprofit membership organization, the Agile Alliance is an excellent resource to help you along your Agile journey. To learn more about the Agile Alliance and our other sponsors, as well as how you can become a sponsor or supporter of our show, please visit acnpodcast.org for more information. And thank you for your support. Good morning and good evening, everyone. This is the Agile Coaching Network. My name's Ray Arell. I'm the host of this little get-together that we've been doing for around four or 5 years now. The Agile Coaching Network, if you're unfamiliar or if this is your first time, this is a conversation between people who are new to Agile, people who've been doing Agile for, years or some of us decades. It's really meant to be a conversation. So I know that sometimes I get on the surveys that afterwards that let the experts speak and let them, go off and give their opinion on all of the questions that come up. And what I find is that those opinions are great, but also the opinions of people who are just getting started or people just as if we were sitting at a park bench, just having a good dialogue and discussion, that helps to bring in diversity, and diversity is important to us and to our community. And that's the overall goal that we try to do here. Some of the regulars that we have normally with us, and I know we have Hendrik and Jorg and Diana here today. This particular podcast, as well as the live event, is brought to you by the Agile Alliance. Agile Alliance, if you're unfamiliar with them, because we get confused all of the times, with other names of alliances that are out there. But Agile Alliance actually formed up at the beginning of when the Agile Manifesto was created back in 2001. And the mission of the organization has been really to create spaces and create a place where we can learn Agile, and in order to take our industries that are currently using the Agile mindset and methods in order to help to go drive and make it more effective, more humane, and more sustainable. And the way that gets accomplished, the mission, if you go up to agilealliance.org, you'll notice that you'll see a large set of member contributed resources that are there. We're a membership organization that believes in sharing. And so the membership itself funds this particular event and pretty much every other event that you see up on the site. And those members and sponsors come together, providing us valuable resources, either through donation or through membership or through in-kind contributions. And those other things come together for us to be able to hopefully make your work environment better. So give them a look, because it's a great mission and I fully believe in it. I've been a part and a member of the Agile Alliance for more than a decade now. And then lastly, let's just have fun. Help to amplify your voice, add your voice to the conversation, and help with us all learning about Agile and Agile development and how it works and makes our industry better. Let's go ahead and get started. So, this year, coming out of 2020 and then into 2021 is actually a significant year for the Agile community. It is the 20th anniversary. Probably one of the earliest artifacts that I have is the draft of the Agile principles as they were going through. And as you know, the story goes, they went over to Snowbird and they sat down and had these great conversations and then came up with the Agile Manifesto, and then the principles came into existence as well. And I found that this particular version resonates with me a little bit, because what kind of lost out in the final draft as it went through is these slanted messages that are here, which is one that says that there's a certain set of these principles that are slanted towards customers, others that are slanted towards managers, and then others towards the team. And all come together in order for us to help at the time when they wrote this, of course, was to write better software, to make it something that a customer sees high value with. And I won't go into the this over this sentences that are there, but they saw that if we were to apply these principles and the values of the Agile Manifesto, that we end up, regardless of the method that is employed, that is taking advantage of that mindset, that we get a better product. And it was pretty much, and I won't say that what happened 20 years ago was exactly just in the minds of those people who were there at that meeting. A lot of this stuff spans back in time, and just because someone couldn't attend the meeting doesn't mean that they weren't a huge influencer of saying that, look, we want to go find a better way of just doing work and how that work is delivered, especially in very complex and very difficult things where you couldn't write a requirement. These methods enabled us to go do some great stuff. So with that, the question that I really want to ask to get us all going today is, now that Agile is reaching the ripe age of 20, what is missing from the values and principles that were written down? Is there a value or a principle that you just think that was missing, that maybe that if we added it would actually make it a better mindset to go approach our work? The second one is, after 20 years, I still get into the discussion, especially people who are kind of new to Agile and Agile development. I still get the people who come up to me and say that, oh, that's a buzzword. And why does it still get called a buzzword? Or maybe in the certain cases, Agile is perceived as a toxic word. It's, I've been agiled, or I've been scrummed, or I've been, there's ways that people use it in a way that doesn't sound like they had a really great experience with it. And then lastly, overall, is it still core to a company's success? And to kick us off on this, Diana, do you want to give us your view on this?
Oh my, okay.
I know, it's like, let's all take a deep breath. Okay.
Yes, yeah. I think what we, looking back now, and particularly the way you started us off with that draft about, this is about customers, this is about managers, this is about the team. What we're realizing now is maybe what's missing is some principles about at the organization level. And of course, the folks who came together did the best job they could at that time. I'm a firm believer in that also that principle, the prime directive. But could they foresee that 15 to 20 years later, that enterprise adoptions and scaling would be such a huge question and so on? None of us have that kind of foresight. So I do think, there are some things like that, and other folks are picking that up. So whether I would call that missing from the manifesto, I mean, I think new things have emerged that we need to pay attention to, but should that have been in the 2001 version of the manifesto? I don't know, I can't say that. But I do think that we now see that there are some additional things that we need. One thing from my point of view, the idea that it's not one size fits all, right? That these principles are all good and they're going to look different in different places. So that's one thing. And then in my role with the Agile Alliance, and I was on the board for a long time. I joined the board just a couple of years after the organization was formed in 2003. Linda Rising sort of twisted my arm and said, we need you to come on the board. And by 2005 or 2006, I was already getting people saying, isn't Agile dead? Aren't we done with Agile? And my response then is the same as my response now. It's like the word isn't what's important. What's important is, how is it serving us and our organizations, and what parts of it do we think will stick? And the example I always give is total quality management. Do we think we would even have a section in the manifesto, section of principles about customers and customer satisfaction and customer values, if total quality management and lean and quality circles and all those things that came out of Japan hadn't come on the scene 20 years before that? Right? So it's, and I'm old enough that I remember when nobody cared whether as you were satisfied as a customer. You got what we wanted to sell you, and beyond that, tough luck, right? And so I think there are parts of Agile that we are going to want to keep, and people do tire of the name. You don't hear about total quality management much anymore, or even business process reengineering. You don't hear about that much anymore. But some of the ideas of those are still around and are still viable, and we build on them, and Agile built on those. So I think people just get tired of the word, tired of the misapplication of the principles, and it's hard. It's hard to make sure that things get applied well. And in closing, I'll just say one more thing to the final question. Is it core to a company's success? If your company is dependent on your people doing knowledge work and beyond that, learning work, yes, it probably is. If that's not what's core to your company, maybe some more planned process would be better for you. But most of the work now, it's hard. I'm hard put to think of any organization that isn't tied to their IT department or their computer systems or those things. And we still need well-crafted software to be put out into the marketplace for folks. So, at some level, whether it's core to your company's success or not, it's certainly core to the success of some company that you depend on.
Hendrik, one of the discussions that we had over December, we cross into, of course, and talked about fit for purpose a lot over the past year. What do you think from your perspective, because your company went through a hard time and then is now back in the goodness of people seeing it as a viable company again? What's your perspective on these questions?
I second a lot of what Diana said. I have maybe a few things I would add here. Starting maybe with the first one, what is missing in the values? What I feel more and more, and you see this in a lot of company that it emerges, is corporate responsibility and sustainability. And I think this is somehow, I feel more and more that there is something missing here about, it's not only about making business and creating some software, but that software has an impact on the planet. So we are taking care of, like we said, like the team, the customer, maybe the organization, like Diana is suggesting, but what about the society and the planet? That's a thing that bothers me more and more. And as engineers, we have every day, we have these decisions that affect, for example, how much energy our products consume and stuff like this. So there is an element here which tells me, okay, companies also need to have a focus on the sustainability of what they are creating, sustainability on the planet. So that would be a direction that I would be thinking into when I would think what values and principles are missing. The principles actually, they contain something about sustainability, but it's more about sustainable pace in the sense of don't burn out people. That's of course very important, but I think I would make this a bit more even global, that perspective.
I'm just curious on, I invent a platform, I create a platform, and that's all, where I dissolve myself of that responsibility. When you're saying sustainability and ethics, are you saying that we need to have a better code of ethics around the principles so that we just don't create something that could cause havoc?
Yeah, I think that's, for me, this is correlated. Yes, absolutely. We need to see the effects of what we offer, and we need to be responsible for it, I think. Okay. Whatever we do, we need to see, we cannot just say, oh, but this was never an intended use of what I've been doing, so it's the fault of the user, you almost could say. And I think, yeah, and we can see that governments are too slow in responding to the changes that technology advancements are providing to the planet. And in that sense, I think there is more and more responsibility also on those globally acting companies. I mean, many companies are acting on a global scale, and they can play with the global scale, while governments are playing on a local field and with a lot of political mechanisms that have to be observed that make it inherently slower. Democracy is slow, but it's very, very good in the sense that it tries that everybody's voices get heard and so on. And we need to have somehow a sustainable ecosystem here where the companies take their share of the responsibility.
Yeah, makes sense. Jorg, what's your opinions?
Yeah, first of all, I strongly agree to what Henrik and Diana said. And my take, one thing is definitely that's not clear enough for a lot of people. Use your own head and don't think this is gospel, because too many people think there is a solution for them here that they don't need to think about. So that's absolving them from responsibility in some way. And I think making this more clear as well, the responsibility to take it to the next 20 years is not there. So there's no direct call for bringing this to the next level. It probably didn't belong there 20 years ago, but now I think that's one of the challenges we have. And I think that's as well a bit connected to the second part of the question. So that's exactly what people driving to call it a buzzword, because it's the easiest way to not get involved and not to spend the effort, because working really agile and paying attention to all those things, it's just more effort. It gets easy over time, but command and control actually, when things are going well, is simpler. You just say and something happens, and as you're lucky, anyway, it goes well. You only need this really in a crisis and under pressure. Pressure goes up, so that's why it's still core, and we have more change, but there's still enough niches where you can comfortably just use it as a buzzword, and a lot of people make money out of this. And is it still core? I think, I don't know if it's core, but it's fundamental. Maybe already other things can condense to a core if you're already step beyond the manifesto. If you're really forming teams, if you're really recognizing what your purpose is, then maybe this is more core to your company, and others who are still caught up in the 1980s, for them it's still not core. So I think the idea is not to depend on it as a core for your company, but to even grow beyond it to exactly this sustainability and responsibility as a more natural thing, which probably tells you what is missing.
There was a question here, not particularly a question, more of a statement from Marcus, was about software development versus agile principles applying into the rest of the other industries. I think there's twofold to this, which is one, agile itself isn't an industry. Agile is a mindset, a way of approaching work that, yes, it's somewhat in, if you're a person selling services, then it's your industry to sell those services, but it's meant to be an enhancement or something that's in the toolkit that's available to you. It's sort of, Agile, did Agile bring the plastic cups to the party, or did it actually bring the entree? I think it does, depending on the company. I think certain companies have used it as core to their business, and I can think of a dozen companies that started Agile as an organization, and then slowly, as the bifurcation took place of that they needed to grow or expand or do something at a larger scale, they had to bring in other methods. And I guess I find that when we're talking core to the company's success, I think it's a component of the company's success. But then there's also the case that you do need talented people. You do need, all of the resources necessary for people to do their mission. And Agile is one component of that, which I think is critical. Reza, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah,
Hello.
you say it correctly. My name is Reza. Thanks for your time. It's a question about, because it's a type of misunderstanding for me, because we have lots of industrials company in Germany that they are really based on the process oriented, and they have like ISO standards or very process oriented say process that they have. And the other case, they have some agile project that they should do it. And based on the other comment that they say, it's very good for the planned process company. And it was a type of clearation for me. Is it possible to have a mixture of process orientation system with agility, or is there any experience that you have in this case? It was my question, because when we have a mass production like automobile industry, and in the same time we have a topic of agility, and is it something that's because I read different type of comment in this case. Some people, they say it is the mass production, we don't need to go to the agile methods or some stuff like that.
Well, let me do this. We have two people here that are on the call that are from Germany, so you're welcome. And you were in automotive for a little bit. You're welcome to talk about your experience specifically in the Germany area.
Yeah, I can. And first, the overall answer, definitely combination is possible, and I'm very sure the automotive companies understand this. And I go a bit into how I experienced it is working. But first, as you focus on production, actually, if you're doing real mass production, like doing exactly the same thing a million times, there is not much about that special process going to anything agile. That's the fit for purpose thing, because your scope is fixed. You have a high technical understanding and very little variation. So there's not much there. There's a lot to be said still for attention to quality and solving problems maybe in an agile way. So the mindset still has its place, but changing that process that actually works for a long time and is proven, why would you want to do that? So that's not the thing, but for getting something new out there, it's definitely possible. And there always the question is, what is the purpose of the process that they have and why do they have it? And if you can have that conversation, you normally get to a point where Agile is actually making this better. So when they ask for a certain kind of specification, what do they want to prove by that specification? I personally did do entertainment for automotive, and we moved to Scrum to do this. And for one audit, we were quite well prepared. We had the discussion, do we need to write specifications before we do the software? And actually, no, we didn't. What they wanted was to have a specification that is exactly saying what the software will do. So in the end, if a problem arises, we know whether that was part of the intention and a misunderstanding or not. So we could correct things consciously and with understanding of reasons. And if you can have that discussion, it's really good. Why are things timed in that process? Because they just need to hit a market window. So in the end, there is a real reason for timing. And then everything else comes down to achieving a certain thing with sufficient security, which again is a discussion. And I can tell you from actually having been employed by one of these companies, they have agile organizations of their own trying to drive their processes agile. And I've seen one of the German automakers build and drive an electric truck on the roads with everything ready to go to mass production, built completely in Scrum. There's absolutely nothing stopping you, but make sure it's fit for your purpose, what you pick.
Right, and to add to that, and I think Peter just put into the comment box, less is being used by BMW. You've got other companies that are using other scaled frameworks today. I know that Lockheed Martin is using some of it in their flight control systems. You've got also, Boeing. I'm formerly from Intel Corporation, and we were using it for CPU design. The method or the adaptation of structure, and we did need structure when we were building a semiconductor, but we also knew that what goes into the semiconductor, what the requirement is, was ever evolving because we had an ecosystem of about 26 to 30 primary customers that we needed to serve, which means that the requirements were always changing. And so even though that we might have said that we were early on waterfall as an organization, reality is when we were looking at how we were behaving as an organization, we were actually behaving in an agile way. We just didn't document it out that way, which is kind of interesting. Sheila, are you there?
When you talk about people calling it a buzzword and in a negative way, I think it's in cases where they've had Agile badly implemented, or what they were calling Agile, but it really wasn't Agile, but that's what they think Agile is. So that's why they call it a buzzword, because they don't really understand it, even if they think that they've had it in their organization.
Right. I agree with you, and I've said this before that I've met people who say that they were scrummed, or they've been and use it like a word like they were abused, which is unfortunate. And I think that bad Agile, and there's a lot of toxic Agile stories that you can read online, and I think it comes down to is that most of those teams were never implementing Agile in the first place. Or in the case of our early adoptions that we were doing, we were using our waterfall mindset with Scrum, and we were just torturing people. We weren't using the Agile Manifesto and its principles and its values. We were using whatever our mindset was before, which unfortunately was horrible.
But I think in big organizations, some parts of the organization may be implementing Agile effectively, and then other departments or divisions say, oh, that seems to be working, let's get on board. And they do it. They don't really, think it through or really understand what it is. So they implement what they think it is, but it's not. And then, so there'll be one part of an organization where they're very, when I talk to the people working there, they are very Agile. And another part where they're like, no, we want nothing to do with that. And they're still sort of shell shocked. It can be all in the same organization, just in different parts of it. If one team or a few teams implemented it well and others implemented it badly, that what you're talking about is more of a worst case scenario than I was thinking of.
Well, I've seen the cases where, and I'm not sure if you've ever read about cargo cults. And a cargo cult is based upon a story of back during World War II, there used to be these Channel Islands where during the war, cargo planes would land and the local indigenous people would unload cargo for the armed forces of either side. And they would get cargo, part of the cargo, as their payment for unloading. And the war ends and the planes no longer land. And so they start to think about, well, why did the planes land here? And so they started dressing up like soldiers, marching around, doing all of the rituals that they observed, thinking that that'll make the planes land again. And that way they can get more of the cargo. And they even set up fake airplanes down on the ground and everything else, but they couldn't see the connection between that they were only mimicking the actions versus actually doing. I invite you to go up, look at the Wikipedia on the pictures on there. They're absolutely cool.
I've seen a documentary on that. I don't remember where or when, but that's just a perfect description of what I was thinking of. That's a great analogy.
Well, you're welcome. Gerald, are you there?
One of the other things I was going to comment on this buzzword, and Agile is a buzzword. I think sometimes, at least with the executives that I'm dealing with, we're a manufacturing organization, and we're actually getting a lot of uptake with Agile in the operations, manufacturing, supply chain groups. But one of the things that I found that made people feel like it was a buzzword was some of the vocabulary. It just still is not so intuitive for a lot of people to talk in terms of release trains and retrospectives and Scrum and product owners. And it's not that any of that's bad. It's just I think sometimes the the history of where it came from out of the technology field sometimes leads people who are not in that field to make it feels very alien to them, and therefore feels like something that's just a fad as opposed to something that's really applicable, even though it's not. I found more success explaining things in just plain English, if you will, and trying to tailor some of the terminology where needed to avoid that kind of buzzword effect. I just wanted to comment on that, but I think it's a very good point.
Scott, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks for bringing me in, Ray. My favorite principle is number 12, the continuous improvement, Kaizen thing. And the one thing that I would sort of accuse the manifesto of not doing is practicing Kaizen on itself, and that comes from some commentary that we've just heard about the application of Agile outside of software. And so when I'm teaching or mentoring or coaching new teams, because I spent 10 years in the software industry doing that across many different companies, and now I'm at a manufacturing company, and so I'm getting in front of the supply chain people and the manufacturing readiness teams and those sort of folks. And so when I bring up the actual values and principles of the manifesto, I've got it edited. I've got software taken out everywhere, and I've replaced it with product or work or some statement that's meaningful to them. And I wonder that there has been no revision of the manifesto to do something like that, knowing that Agile is now part of medical industry and manufacturing and all kinds of other things have taken the mindset and adopted a lot of the frameworks outside of that. I will say also to another commenter who was asking, when it's appropriate to still do sort of traditional methods, or is it still valid? And of course it is. If you've ever had the opportunity to read Dave Snowden's Cynefin model, it's a pretty simple kind of like quad chart approach to looking at the types of problems and the types of work that are in front of your people. So if you're in the obvious and repeatable area, then waterfalls may still be the right thing for you. On the manufacturing floor, if there's a specific process to build a specific part that's going to be assembled into a specific product, then you probably are going to be very waterfall in the manner that you work. But when you're designing new parts and you're coming up with new systems and building new products, then just about everywhere else, I think Agile gives you gives teams and people and humans the advantage.
Agreed. I love Dave Snowden's when he was talking about how to make Agile wild again. He's got this picture of a wolf, and he says, well, that's the foundations of Agile. And it seems to be that it's now more of a Pekingese or something. And he says you got to unleash the inner wolf again and let it go back into the more complex and more chaotic situations of applying it. Well, thank you for your comment. Christine, are you there?
A couple of thoughts backtracking on what the last gentleman says. I work in the federal space, and in a traditional, I'm in accounting. So, I do think when I try to teach Agile across my firm, people think of it as not necessarily a buzzword, but they think it's kind of, one of my partners, I think he said, hippy dippy and kind of trippy. It was a little too soft. It was a little too soft, a little too, and it's unfortunate, a little too people embracing, to an extent. And that's something that I'm really trying to change. But also with that, given our core capabilities, where I am, trying to get people to think that Agile is not just for software is hard to do when the manifesto and the principles talk a lot about software. I always transition it to solutions rather than software, because not everything is software. So I would really like a broader discussion about that. or a broader emphasis on that. The Scrum Guide did, at the last release of the Scrum Guide did pull back a lot of that software terminology, but I think the Agile Manifesto has opportunity to do the same.
I would not disagree with that at all. I've inserted the word solution myself there for the last decade, because again, coming from a semiconductor background, put the word software in there and it just made people kind of negative to it. I think Hendrik, you were on this panel with me. If you're still on the call, I think he had to drop because he had another meeting. But we had a panel discussion one time about, if you're going to use the kind of the core values and principles from the manifesto, rewrite them in a way that makes it relevant to your business. Meaning, take the principles and map them to your core words, and that way they're much more consumable by people because it's in the language of the company. And when we did with Intel Corporation, people said, "Oh yeah, now I see how it relates."
I would like to add to what you and the previous speaker had said about, it being solutions, not necessarily software. I wanted to chime in and answer the question from my perspective, the question of what is driving people to still call it a buzzword. From my perspective, I think it's because when leadership does not lead by example, when you see these principles and are told, hey, this is how we're going to operate, but you don't see people living by that or working by that, right? From leadership, it feels like it's just the latest trend rather than truly adopted and reflected in the company's leadership. So that's from my perspective, right? It's kind of like it's the trendy, it's the hip thing to say or be or to do, but do the leadership and do the leaders really truly believe in it? And if there's got to be that integrity, right? Model for your people exactly what you want them to do. I mean, and the point, my perspective is Agile is not just a way of creating or working solutions or software. It really is a philosophy or a way of living. I mean, when you really boil it down to what are we saying with the values? It's value people. People are important, and when there's change, communicate that change. Include people, and that's really the bottom line.
Well, thank you for that. Christopher, are you there?
Yes, I appreciate the conversation here. Kind of to piggyback off of what others have said, I'm finding kind of the biggest challenge recently in my colleagues who, to be nice, they claim to be Agile, but they're really trying to do more of a hybrid approach or even a PMP type of approach, and they call it Agile. I'm not even sure they've even read the Agile Manifesto, some of them, but that's some of the challenges, to be very frank, that I've run into, and I've been called an Agile bigot of all things, and that's being kind of on the rougher end of the scale. But it's kind of an interesting complication. I am very passionate about Agile. My mentor was very close to the heart of Agile, to the root of it, and to the 17 original authors. So I feel like I was very fortunate there, but I definitely don't want to be a bigot or to be arrogant in any way. But that seems to be a way that many times people are shot down who are passionate about Agile, who want to do the right thing and not just do Agile, but be Agile and consider themselves kind of on a lifelong quest to follow that and passionately pursue that. So I agree with everything that's been said so far. Agile did start in software development, but it has so many great applications because it's just based on simple solution-oriented logic. So it definitely can spread, and it is spreading, thankfully.
The bigot comment, I think sometimes people mistake, when we're being very passionate about something, a life experience in some regards, and I always used to say this, that when somebody goes to, say, a conference or an event, and I used to have this all the time where it's like I would have this changing experience where I met a speaker or someone showed me to do something, and I'm just absolutely just floored about, this is the greatest thing, and I want to go tell my team. And I come back to my team and they all look at me and go, well, I didn't get to go to the cool place that you had that cool experience with. So therefore I'm blocking you out. And I've seen sometimes just the dynamics of where people are at. They're either very receptive to the message or they're not receptive to the message. And so the best thing that you could do and continue to do is just to be yourself and work in an agile way. And then hopefully others will look at that and go, you know what? I want to be like that as well. David, your hand just went up. What do you have on this?
Yeah, hey, I sort of want to echo what some of the other folks have been saying. I'm a bit mystified that so many people seem to see it as a buzzword, but I've come to the conclusion that it's all about the people. There is no point in Agile where it doesn't involve people, right? We're serving a customer, we're serving a leader, we're serving ourselves. It's always somebody in that human interaction, and I think the manifesto is that set of beliefs, right? When you run into folks that are really pushing back on what you're talking about, I feel like they're just not in that tribe, right? They may be later, but at this point in the time, they're just not seeing things, they're not believing the same things that you are. And that makes for some serious conflict. I've run into a few myself. But the biggest thing is what's best for the customer. Are we being innovative? Are we valuing the people, our employees, right? Treating people right? Are we able to serve the folks that are trying to deliver something, our leaders? Are we giving them what they need? Too often, what we look for is a prescription, right? A process. So in order to be agile, we do this, sort of like the cargo cult you mentioned, right? We do this, we do this, we do this, and then we're good to go. And that's old thinking, right? That's leadership thinking. We're here to tell you underlings how to do it, and then we'll be successful. And Agile is all about all of us together coming up with the best way to serve a different group of folks.
You bring up a really good point there, which is, are we creating recipe followers? Are we creating chefs?
Yeah.
And my view is that people when they're at their top of their game doing Agile development, they're chefs because they're looking at the ingredients that they have in front of them, and they're able to whip up a tasty meal that makes somebody happy. It's the same thing with software development or any other development in any other industry. Is this is the ingredients I have? What can I build? And that's not a recipe following. That's a chef in my book. Thank you for your comment there. Let's see. As we got the last 10 minutes of the episode here, there's another question I want to just throw in here that was up on Slido. Kind of shifting gears a little bit from what we were just talking about, but how would you describe the difference between facilitating a meeting and leading a meeting? Are they similar? And to kick this off, I'm gonna, Deanna, as an expert facilitator that I know of, that you are my role model and my hero. Could you shine some insight on?
Actually, that is one of the very first things that tends to come up in facilitator trainings. And the sense is that the facilitator is there. I mean, we've been throwing around the word process, and what I realize is that it's used in a lot of different ways. So instead of saying process, I will say the facilitator is there to create and manage a flow of discussion activities that will get the group that they are working with to an outcome that they value. Sometimes it veers off from the one they thought we were going to get, but they still value the one they get in the end. That's good facilitation. Leading a meeting has more to do with establishing the purpose of the meeting, maybe being the person who is best capable of working with the facilitator to decide, is there an agenda? I mean, retrospective agendas are easy because they're kind of standard, but there are lots of different kinds of meetings, and knowing why you're showing up for the meeting and how your time is going to be used what are the different topics you should be prepared for when you get there. Those kind of communications come from the leader of the meeting. They are the product owner of the meeting, if you will. And they know what the intent of this meeting is, and they work with the facilitator so that the facilitator can figure out what that flow of discussion activities or interactive activities might be. And so we used to say in the bad old days that the leader set the agenda and encouraged the group to move through the agenda, making sure all the topics were addressed, and worked with a facilitator who would bring the sort of form those topics would take and would lead through. So both are focused, in the way they're similar, is both are focused on the successful outcome to the meeting. But they have different roles to play. At least that's sort of the standard facilitator training definitions.
Okay.
I'd love to hear an alternate because I always get new ideas that way.
Cool. Your microphone went live for a second.
Yeah. Then I was listening intensely to get that detailed explanation. So from my point of view, the leader is really setting a direction and probably having a goal in mind as a result of the meeting. So he's really looking at the outcome, while the facilitator more looks at the flow. If the flow is really progressing and everybody's in the flow, then results will come. So really, I look a bit at it like really enabling the flow is best facilitation. Obviously, you need a goal. You need somebody who is pulling the results to get the flow really going and asking the question, but everybody needs to contribute. That's as one an important thing for me, for the facilitator. He tries to make this one inclusive. And inclusive might even mean making sure people who don't have a stake get out before they get bored. But really enabling the energy while others bring the energy. That's a bit the way how I try to do this. And really being in two positions at once is at least something I can't do. If I'm really having stakes in the end result, doing good facilitation is, at least for me, nearly unachievable.
Yeah, I think that last thing that Jörg said is also a critical differentiator. The leader has a stake in the outcome, is passionately, or at least somewhat connected to the content. The facilitator has no connection to the content, so that they don't get hooked by it. They need to keep their attention on what Jörg said about participation, designing the flow to begin with, and then managing the participation all the way through. Whereas leaders are focused more in are we discussing the right content?
As Jörg said, that the struggle of being both. I've made the mistake of trying to be both in the past, and I can tell you that because I had an iron in the fire, there was something that I wanted from the meeting. Subconsciously, my facilitation was driving the meeting towards a particular outcome that I wanted, versus what makes it best to bring this group of people together in order to form up what would be a much more diverse and better outcome for us. And so, as much as we try to struggle with wearing multiple hats, this is one area that I would say that, yeah, you need to have a clear distinction to it. The other thing is that the facilitator is well trained to be able to understand the dynamics of a group. I come from an environment where we have a bunch of type A personalities, the people who eat their dinner over the stove. But then we also have some people who are the thinkers, the more introverts of the group. And a good facilitator can bring the room together more effectively and get those thoughts and ideas out on the table. And the ones that I know that do it incredibly well and are well trained, you get amazing results from that. Unfortunately, we are getting to the top of the hour. I missed actually having this meeting last month because I enjoy just getting and being with everyone. But hey, we're here, it's off and starting all of these things again, so that's great. There's a lot of opportunities that are coming up for us. There is the Agile Alliance is making the old new again. There's a gathering that's going to be happening on February 16th. It's an online retrospective, kind of in a similar theme to what we were talking about earlier in the call. If you want, go to the Agile Alliance events, sign up for it there. The next one is specifically if you're in India, but since it's online, if you want to stay up in the middle of the night and also be a part of this unconference, I was a part of this physically last year and enjoyed it quite a bit. Agile Today is running probably like their third or fourth edition of the unconference. Please go up and look at that one as well. It's available. It's going to be on the February 27th through the 28th. Other than that, we also have a call for abstracts that are now opening for Agile 2021. Agile 2021 will happen, but it will be a virtual event. We would love to be physical and get together and be in a physical space. We're going to do our best to make as much networking and other things that we could do to make it as close as we can to a physical event as we can, but we are definitely going to have it this year. We've missed everyone and we want to make sure that we have everyone together. Another one to talk about is Agile Reflect, which is Agile Alliance is a sponsor for this as well. Agile Reflect is, if you go look at it, see it throwing up on Facebook and then on my LinkedIn and places, it's really a unique concept where they've created the space and they're making it available for people to come in and speak about the great topics, again, back to the 20 year of the manifesto. And it's sort of just this really great, if we build the platform and allow people to self-organize, that's what's happening. And so there's a lot of great topics that are up there. You can't miss it someplace. I know that on agilealliance.org, we do have hopefully a reference or link. If we don't, we're going to get it up there as well. That's actually an opportunity if you want to hear. I'm on a speaking panel coming up middle of the month. If you want to interact with me again, that's a place that you can go do that. And with that really concludes today's show. I want to really thank everyone for participating. I want to thank the regulars. Couldn't do it without you. And I hope that you guys have a great month. This podcast is provided by Agile Alliance for educational and informative purposes only. To find out more information about the member-supported Agile Alliance, please go to agilealliance.org to find out about more upcoming events, as well as different programs that are available to help you with your Agile journey.